Her Excellency, the Australian High Commissioner to Ghana, permit me to stand on the existing protocol so that we can make some time. Let me say good morning to all of you once again. On behalf of His Excellency, the President of the Republic of Ghana, His Excellency John Dramani Mahama, I wish to express our sincere appreciation to the Australian High Commission and the Kofi Annan International Peacekeeping Training Center for collaborating on this timely and critical program. This forum reflects the shared commitment of Ghana and our international partners to promoting peace, stability, and inclusive governance in West Africa. It provides an opportunity to interrogate not only our regional peace and security architecture, but also to emphasize the often overlooked role of women as active agents in conflict prevention and democratic consideration. Distinguished ladies and gentlemen, West Africa is a region of enormous promise, abundant natural resources, resilient communities, and growing democratic institutions. Yet it continues to grapple with complex security challenges. These include violent extremism in the Sahel, insurgency and terrorism in Nigeria, piracy in the Gulf of Guinea, and climate-induced conflict and socio-political unrest. The impact has been profound: displacement, loss of livelihood, destruction of infrastructure, and erosion of trust in the state institutions. In recent times, developments such as political instability, socio-cultural tensions, and the growing presence of transnational organized crime have posed significant challenges to the democratic and security gains achieved across the region. Ghana remains deeply committed to democracy, peace, and the rule of law. Our political history has not been without setback, including 4 military interventions. However, we have transitioned into a stable democratic state that upholds constitutional governance. Ladies and gentlemen, in addressing conflict, we have shifted from reactive approach to preventive posture. The Ministry of Interior, working closely with the National Peace Council, is actively engaging communities to de-escalate tension in over 300 identified potential hotspots. We believe that peace is not merely the absence of war, just as many have said before. It is the presence of justice, inclusive governance, and respect for human dignity. Conflict in West Africa is driven by interlinked factors such as poor governance and weak state institutions, ethnic and cultural and religious intolerance, youth unemployment and economic exclusion, resource competition, environmental threats, as well as proliferation of small arms and external destabilization influences. Addressing this root cause requires holistic, sustained, and inclusive approach that brings state and non-state actors to the table. We must strengthen early warning systems, invest in reconciliation mechanisms, and build resilient institutions that deliver justice and opportunity. Your Excellencies, one of the most urgent tasks before us is to amplify women's voice in the space of peace building, governance, and democratic transitions. Women are not just victims of conflict. They are peace builders, mediators, community leaders, and agents of change. Across West Africa, women have mobilized for disarmament and ceasefires, as seen in Liberia, as mentioned earlier, in Sierra Leone, and led grassroots peace dialogue and community healing processes, pushed for gender-inclusive legislation and early warning system, and advocated for accountability and transitional justice. Despite this contribution, women remain underrepresented in formal peace negotiation, security institutions, and political decision-making. Distinguished ladies and gentlemen, Ghana has taken progressive steps to promote women's leadership in peace and democratic governance by appointing Ghana's first female vice president in 2025, 3 female chief justices, and 2 female electoral commission chairs over the past 2 decades. In 2024, Ghana also passed the Affirmative Action, Gender Equality Act in 2024, mandating a minimum 40% female representation in public appointments. Cabinet has also ordered the validation of a new draft national agenda policy to replace the one prepared in 2015 to better align with contemporary peace and security dynamics. In addition, through our partners, we developed and implemented the Ghana National Action Plan on the UNSCR 1325 to institutionalize women's role in peace processes at national and community levels. My understanding is that the document is under review after implementation over the last 5 years. These efforts reflect our belief that women must not only be at the table, they must be part of the head of the table when decisions about peace and governance are made. To ensure conflict prevention and sustainable peace in West Africa, we must act decisively on the following: institutionalize women's leadership in peace architecture, at the national level, regional, and local. Invest in education, youth employment, and equitable economic development to tackle grievances and exclusion. Strengthen regional collaboration through ECOWAS protocols and joint security operations. Enhance digital literacy and counter disinformation, which often fuel political and ethnic tensions. Promote inclusive dialogue and participatory governance, particularly in fragile and transitional contexts. Prioritize early warning and rapid response mechanism driven by civil society and women's groups. Ladies and gentlemen, conflict prevention is not passive, it is proactive. It requires vision, unity, and courage. We must be bold enough to act before crisis erupts. Let us honor the memory of those who have suffered by preventing future tragedies. Let us commit, government, civil society, development partners, and most importantly, women and youth, to build a region where peace is not fragile but firm, where democracy is not cosmetic but credible, and where every voice is heard and valued. Let us not wait for the next crisis to ask what more could we have done. Let us act now with resolve, unity, and a shared vision for peace in West Africa. I want to thank all of you for this audience. May God continue to bless our sub-region and bless our country. Thank you very much.
Many thanks, Honorable Minister, and I do know that you have to take leave of us at this point. And so the Honorable Minister will be taking leave of us now. As he goes, we will have a few people join him outside the auditorium for a quick group photo. Shall we be upstanding as they take leave of us now? The Honorable Muntaka Mubarak will be joined by Her Excellency Bernice Owen-Jones, His Excellency Mohamed Hassan Kaisamba, Her Excellency Musu Jatoru, Ambassador Medina Wesa, Ms. Penny Dennis, Manti Terawali, Honorable Dr. Agnes Namomulati, Her Ladyship Justice Professor Henrietta Mensah Bonsu, COP Dr. Shaibu Pabi Gariba, who is a representative of the Inspector General of Police here, Major General Lawrence Kweku Betenu, Chief of Army Staff, Commodore Faustina Anochi, representative of the Chief of Naval Staff, Air Commodore Ajo Jage, representative of the Chief of Air Staff, Mrs. Lavinia Mensa, Executive Director for the West African Network for Peace Building, Amelia Edward, Second Secretary for the Australian High Commission, as well as Lakeisha Finn, First Secretary and Consul. Please join the Minister outside for a quick group photo. Thank you very much. As they head out now, we make a quick transition to our policy roundtable. And our policy roundtable this morning is going to focus on strengthening regional mechanisms for conflict prevention and stability. Please take your seats. Thank you. Now, our speakers for this policy roundtable bring very, very unique insights and decades of experience from across West Africa. But before I introduce them, shall we, with a round of applause, welcome our moderator for this session in the person of Kemini Amano from TV3. Allow me now to introduce our panelists for this session. Our first panelist will be Dr. Festus Kofi Obin, Regional Coordinator, Research and Capacity Building for the West Africa Network for Peace Building. Janet Adama Mohammed is the West Africa Program Director for Conciliation Resources. She also joins us for this policy roundtable. Mutaru Mumuni Mukhtar, the Executive Director for the West Africa Center for Counter-Extremism, also joins us. And we will also have Vera Bediako, Chief Program Officer for the Ministry of Gender, Children and Social Protection for the Republic of Ghana. Now, as mentioned earlier, this session is actually being moderated by TV3 journalist Kemini Amano, and TV3 are proud partners of this event. Kemini, over to you.
Thank you, KKB. Good morning once again, all protocol duly observed. This roundtable over the next 45 minutes will unpack where the region stands, what mechanisms are working, what bold steps are needed to prevent instability and conflict before it even erupts. And so let's get right into the conversation. Janet, I'll start with you. Thanks to your extensive knowledge across the sub-region, let's start with where we are now today. What will be your analysis of the state of peace and security across the sub-region? I think we should hear you now.
Yeah. Thank you very much, Amabli, for this opportunity, and thank the organizers for the opportunity to be here, my fellow panelists. I think that West Africa is at a critical state of its peace and security. I'm saying it's critical because there are a number of issues, insecurity, instability issues in the sub-region that we have not yet tackled. And also that we don't have the right strategy to tackle. We are still looking for the strategies of dealing with these insecurities and instability issues. So I will say that at the moment in West Africa, there are several issues, and there are very limited strategies of dealing with them.
What are some of the issues you'd say?
The insurgency in the Sahel, the split between the AES and ECOWAS. We also have the insecurity that is ongoing in Nigeria. If you look at Nigeria, there is insecurity in almost all the regions of Nigeria, be it the northeast, the northwest, the north central, the south-south, the southeast, the southwest. Each of the regions have insecurity issues. And let's not belabor this. Nigeria is one of the biggest countries in West Africa. And so if they are struggling, it means the whole region is also struggling. The situation in the Sahel region also has its own impact on the rest of the region, especially the coastal areas as we see today. So these are some of the critical issues. Political transitions are still not being organized well, and so these are some of the other issues that we need to look at. The influx of young people, the growing disenfranchised young people in our region is also another issue. The efforts, the unrecognized efforts of women and young people and local populations is also an issue. I'm saying unrecognized because these are areas which could be harnessed to support policy efforts.
Thanks for painting us a picture of what the situation is at the moment. But in addition to that is the threat of extremism. And that's where I bring you in, Mukhtar. What does it look like for the sub-region today as we speak?
Yeah. All right, thank you. Good morning to you. Good morning to everyone. I'd like to begin by thanking the Australian High Commission for this opportunity to be part of these important conversations. I'd like to begin off by, building on what Madam Janet talked about, the reality that West Africa, in terms of security, is under siege. It's under siege in many ways. We just moving, depending on how far you want to trace back, we're just recovering from, COVID and the vulnerabilities that COVID added to the existing reality of insecurity in the region. The issues of violent extremism, terrorism spreading from the Sahelian towards coastal states. And added onto that is the issue of the breakaway states, through coup d'etats. At the moment, the story doesn't look good. In terms of terrorism, if you look at data from last year, 2024, we are talking about, the Sahel accounting for over 51% of all terrorism, fatalities throughout, the world. If you look at data from the Global Terrorism Index, even though we're seeing a reduction in terms of numbers of attacks, we're seeing improvement in terms of fatality, success rate per attack. The fatality numbers have increased, whilst the numbers of attacks have increased. We're looking about, 19%, for the Sahel. And so the reality is that we are in a very bad situation. And, traditionally, we would say that coastal states have not been affected the same way as a traditional Sahelian state. But we're beginning to see the significant, impact that the terrorism in the Sahel is having on us. If you consider the fact that apart from Ghana, all our direct neighbors are dealing with terrorism. In Togo, in Benin, Cote d'Ivoire, and of course, Burkina remains the epicenter of terrorism. It accounts for about 1/5 of all global, statistics when it comes to terrorism. Here in our own country, we've seen the influx of refugees. If you look at data from the IOM, International Organization for Migration, and Ghana Refugee Board, you'll be talking about numbers about 15,000 of those who have come in here. Significant number of those have not been accounted for. And so we're seeing the impact of terrorism even on coastal states. If you are from the north or familiar, you would see the changing of routes, trade routes for, the trucks that import goods from the place and import goods from here towards the place. So it's affecting trade relations between us. And the big concern is the reality of unresolved conflicts in coastal states and in the Sahel. Unresolved conflicts around chieftaincy, around land and resources, and existing inter-ethnic violence within the sub-region. And immediately I would refer to the issue of Boko, which remains unresolved and continue to serve as a source of worry and potential exploitation by extremist groups. So the picture doesn't look good for us, and we need to double up in terms of our efforts to build resilience against that.
Thank you so much. But Dr. Obin, WANEP has a long-standing network across the sub-region, monitoring events across the region. What I want us to do now is to assess, that split in ideology. We have ECOWAS on the one hand, we have the AES on the other hand. How it is impacting our ability to counter some of these situations.
Let me also start by thanking the organizers for the invitation, and also to congratulate ECOWAS, because ECOWAS is 50 years today. Whilst we are talking about the challenges, I think we also need to recognize some of the milestones that ECOWAS has achieved over the years: the free movement, trade liberalization, the infrastructure projects, and all that. But having said that, I think that the threat that we face are not national in scope, they are cross-border. and affects countries across the region, which requires coordinated response and unified approach in addressing them. And if you look at the Sahel is also the epicenter of most of the challenges that we are talking about in terms of violent extremism, in terms of the climate security, nexus, organized crime, and all that. And so we require the Sahel to be able to confront some of the challenges that confront us today. And that is why their breakaway from ECOWAS exposes us to most of the vulnerabilities that we have been dealing with. And that is why also there is a need for us to continue to cooperate with these AES countries, because whether the ongoing mediation dialogue brings them back to ECOWAS, which is unlikely, at least in the short term, we need to still have multilateral engagement and bilateral engagement with these AES countries to see how best we can together address some of the challenges that confront us. And I think ECOWAS has also, done well within since January by trying to encourage the AES to be part of, the regional framework. I think last week the ECOWAS president was in Mali to discuss some of these issues, and that's the way to go, because the challenges that confront us, Ghana cannot deal with it alone. Nigeria cannot deal with it alone. We need a unified approach to be able to confront them. Thank you.
Thank you so much. Thank you so much, Dr. Oben. Vera, I'm coming to you now because anytime there is conflict of any kind, women as a vulnerable set of people suffer the most. And the Liberian ambassador said something earlier about much more than representation, women have to be heard. My question is, how heard are women in this country, in respect to peace and security, in respect to conflict prevention? How heard are women in this country? How does it reflect with the rest of the region?
All right. Thank you very much. And I must say the Ministry of Gender, Children and Social Protection is also pleased to be part of this Laudable initiative by the Australian High Commission. And to begin with, let's take the picture from the global angle. And so globally, the United Nations Security Council Resolution 1325 is what is shaping the Women Peace Agenda. And Ghana is no exception, because we have a Ghana National Action Plan on Women, Peace and Security, with which we are ensuring the participation, the protection of women, and also the prevention of violence. And there's also another pillar which is talking about relief and recovery. And so in as much as Ghana is implementing this action plan, I must say that we are on course in ensuring that women's voices are heard, though we have not reached where we want to be, because in many of the instances, it becomes more like an afterthought for a woman to be invited to join such discussions. But from even the presentation so far, we've all realized that it is indeed prerogative for us to ensure that women are the center of such peace-building negotiations, because it has far-reaching implications and impact on the entire family and communities. And so with implementing the Women's Peace and Security Agenda with the Ghana National Action Plan, I must say that % representation of women in all institutions across board, whether private or government. And so when we increase the number of women who are participating in the peace-building processes, it helps in ensuring that we have a gender lens when we are looking at the issues. In fact, inclusion is not just having them to participate, sit on the table, but their voices must be heard, and the decisions they make will have far-reaching impact on the kinds of... With the Affirmative Action Act in force, what is being asked for us to do is that we are supposed to ensure 40% representation of women in all in the peace-building processes. It helps in ensuring that we have a gender lens when we are looking at the issues. In fact, inclusion is not just having them to participate, sit on the table. It's of our outcome that we have. And so we are saying that we have not really been able to get women represented fully. But because of the action plan that Ghana is implementing, we are making inroads. And we hope that with the passage of the Affirmative Action Act, we will be able to get more women represented, especially in the security services, which the Act actually states their role and all that they are supposed to do to ensure that we get more women at that level, decision-making level, where they can influence such decisions for the peace processes to be that impactful. Yeah.
I see. I'm going to come back to you. We'll talk a bit more about women. But Janet, to you now, I glean that we have made progress on the sub-region. However, there's still much more work to be done, right? But we also find ourselves at a very crucial point where there is a split in ideology between those on the ECOWAS front or side and those on the AES side. Is AES a threat to us as we exist now? A threat to our peace and security?
That's a question with neither no nor yes as an answer. What's important is that the AES citizens are still ECOWAS citizens. For me, that's the way I see it, because no one has gone to divorce the relationships that exist locally across the borders. The ethnic groups that are shared in the border regions still relate with one another. And there are also bilateral relations between ECOWAS countries and individual AES countries. There are still ongoing relationships. We cannot speak of the AES as a very separate entity from ECOWAS as it is now. I think there are still ongoing efforts to build relationships, even if there is no total reintegration between AES and ECOWAS. I think there is still the opportunity to redefine new paths, ECOWAS countries and AES countries. And that is because we continue to be citizens of a specific region that even boundaries cannot clearly define. We have various ethnic groups in Ghana, and you find them in Burkina Faso. We have the Fulbe as an ethnic group, which you can find in most countries in West Africa. You have the Moshi, you can find them in most countries in West Africa. You have the Hausa, sitting in most countries in West Africa, in Nigeria, in Niger, in Mali. You can find them in different countries. What are we saying? That there is a clear distinction between AES and ECOWAS. Yes, in the sense of policy, yes, because ECOWAS has clear policies in terms of who is a member. And AES is defining clear policies in terms of who is member of AES. And so in that regard, you can say they are distinct. However, when we go down into the reality of operations, it is not clear.
It would appear to be the same?
Yes, of course it would. There is the opportunity for good relationships in the future. There is opportunity for even politically defined regional settings. We have the Accra initiative that is in existence, and I know it is struggling because, sorry. Yes, I know it is struggling because of the split between ECOWAS and the AES. There are other regional groupings that we can look at in terms of whether there are opportunities for.
Indeed. I apologize for that. But perhaps you're dealing with that. I'll move on to Mukhtar now.
Yes,
because Mukhtar, while we talk about collaborating with the AES, we also have to delicately balance it so as not to come across as condoning military coups. your take on how we can manage to do this and still work together?
Well, it's a very delicate issue, as Madam talked about. And it's a delicate issue that we must be very deliberate in terms of how we engage as nations on this matter. And we need to first establish that we are not condoning military-style leadership or coups within the sub-region, because that is contrary to ECOWAS's own protocols on good governance and the rule of law. An alternative to bad civilian government is not military government. Is better. But if you look at the very important issue of security, we need to look past the vehicle through which these governments are in place and look at common areas of interest in terms of regional security and building resilience against common threats, set threats. Adopted that very strong opposition to the coup situations when they, emerged, especially in the case of Niger. We are now seeing a total about turn, a sort of recalibration of ECOWAS's approach to dealing with it. And for me, that looks very positive and is very commendable that Ghana seemed to have adopted a very pragmatic approach to dealing with the issue. We have built a kind of relationship with, Burkina Faso that appears positive from my perspective when it comes to regional cooperation, interagency collaboration, and information sharing. We cannot do or address this challenge without these things, and we need to build that, and we need to move away from the political narratives around the leadership that is in place, whether they are democratic or not. We need to be dealing with the common issues of security, and we must be able to balance the idea that we're supporting the common cause of security and not, embracing or condoning military-style leadership.
I mean, are you suggesting then that what goes on in Burkina Faso, in Niger, in Mali, should be none of our business as long as we are collaborating with them to keep the rest of us safe?
As ECOWAS, it is our business. It's our business, to see or to know or be interested in what happens in each country. But there's a limit to which we do in this case in terms of, the country's own sovereignty, issues. ECOWAS has that capacity, or should have that capacity, to chart a path, to direct how governance, is taken or takes place within the sub-region. As a regional body, it must be capable of asserting itself as a body that is in charge of, shaping the narrative and the policies that are around governance and around security. When you lose that, it gives nations like these three countries that takes their destiny into their own hands. And it must be clear that we have been done a good job at ensuring or asserting, ourselves in terms of ECOWAS in charge of security and in charge of governance and development. If you look at all these three countries, Niger, Mali, and Burkina Faso, they all rank very low in the Human Development Index, about 183, and above for all these three countries. It tells us that the reality is that is a response to the ineffective governance policies in place. That's why this reality, emerged and the coups became possible in these countries. And so we cannot lose sight of the reality on the ground and what ECOWAS's own, responsibilities are in ensuring that we fix these things. And that's why these nations became defiant of ECOWAS when the coups happened. And now is another opportunity to recalibrate our efforts, our approach to dealing with governance in the sub-region. All countries, what happens in all countries, should worry or should, ECOWAS should be interested, and we can look at it holistically as a regional body.
Dr. Oben, let's tackle ECOWAS now, because as Mukhtar has said, we need to also check the reality. There are many people like Mukhtar who agree or think that ECOWAS itself, should be blamed for where we are today. Now, my question is, with your expansive work across the sub-region, because in order for us to prevent conflict, nip it in the bud before it erupts, we should be able to link our ability to see it with our policies, and ECOWAS will be at the center of all those things. What is the linkages, or what are the linkages you are able to draw in that?
Okay, so if I get your question right, You see, we need to understand ECOWAS as a supranational body and the challenges supranational bodies face, which is the issue of sovereignty that my brother spoke about. I mean, there are numerous instances where there are early warning indicators. I mean, WANEP provides early warning support to ECOWAS. There are early warning indicators in various member countries that shows that if proactive measures are not being taken, this is likely to lead to instability or crisis. But member states will always assert their sovereignty. And that is one of the major challenges that organizations like ECOWAS face. And I'll give you an example. We are talking about these AES countries because they are military leaders who have done coups and are now ruling their countries. But we also have constitutional coups, where you have countries like Togo and others, where constitutions are changed to move from one presidential system to a parliamentary kind of system. And it's clear in the ECOWAS protocols that these are things that the regional norms frowns upon. But member countries are so smart that sometimes the protocol says you don't change constitution 6 months to election. But they will make sure they change it a year before the election. And so when that happens, it becomes very difficult for ECOWAS to respond. For me, because of this issue, I think that citizens of member states have an important role to play, as well as civil society actors in member states. Because ECOWAS itself is constrained. And ECOWAS is not the commission sitting in Abuja. Those who take the decisions are the heads of state. And it becomes very difficult for heads of state to criticize each other. And it's the responsibility of we citizens, we CSOs, to make sure that we call our leaders to order when things are not going right. And so I think that whilst we are criticizing ECOWAS for most of the challenges within the region, internally, member states must take responsibility for some of the things that have happened and how citizens have also risen up to challenge government to ensure that whatever governance we are implementing addresses the needs and aspirations of the people.
So, Doc, more directly and clearly, from what you have said, it means that we are not able to connect our early warning systems, for instance, like those that we get from WANEP, to
response,
to political early response, so to speak, and political decisions, and that will fall at the doorstep of the individual member states.
Yes. So we have a lot of response mechanisms at the level of the regional body and also at member states. So in ECOWAS, for example, we have the ECOWAS Council of the Wise, which is made up of very prominent people across the region who are supposed to support ECOWAS, the Mediation and Security Council, and the Commission to proactively respond to some of the early warning signs. But they have not been so effective due to technical challenges and also funding support. At the national level, we have the peace infrastructures. Like in Ghana, we have the National Peace Council. You go to the community level, they have peace committees and all that, which is supposed to be part of our response framework. But in terms of the political commitment to invest in these frameworks has been quite insufficient and inadequate. So the data is there, but when it comes to the response, it's always a challenge. And the political class also sometimes will and commitment is there to be able to address some of the challenges that we are facing.
Indeed, let me have Vera take her second bite and then I'll hand over back to the MC of the event because I think that there's a bit more to be talked about, but let's open it up in a bit. So Vera, clearly, when we are taking some of these decisions, women are not there. In fact, I read a document that said that at the UN level, less than 20% of women lead or co-lead delegations for peacekeeping purposes. Now, what role could women be playing that we are not allowing women to play in peace building, in preventing conflict?
Thank you very much. Before I come to that, let me just add a little to the early warning and response mechanisms. In fact, what is happening is because of the impact of violent extremism, women and girls talk about gender-based violence, loss of livelihoods. It is imperative that when we are putting in place such a mechanism to prevent these things, we should have those who will be greatly affected on board. If they are not on the table, how can they take decisions that can help, in fact, the whole family, in effect? Because you know how women, mothers are able to even solve the little conflicts within their family. They don't want these things to escalate, so they are always ready to sit down with them. And so maybe we are missing for not getting them on the table.
So there's no heart in the solutions.
Exactly. And so maybe going forward, he says something. It points me to the fact that we need to invest in such things. When we put the woman there and then you don't have resources for the implementation, for instance, of the plan that I spoke about, then it means all the issues which will look at the inclusiveness of women, girls, boys, and the vulnerable groups. Here we are talking about persons with disabilities. Early warning mechanisms are able to let you know the impact of some of these things on persons with a double burden of the impact of these wars. And so if we don't put in place mechanisms to ensure gender inclusion in the indicators that we put forward for such operations, we are missing a very chunk of the people who need to benefit from such initiatives. And so resources being put down to help will also be of support in this regard.
Pause at this point and then I'll hand over to KKB.
Thank you, Kemini Amano. And again, I must say we're live on TV3 as well as Newswire Radio and the website newswiregh.com. I know a number of you have a few questions in mind, some suggestions. We would like to keep it very short, so if you have any question or suggestion you would like to share, as far as the comments put across are concerned, there are two people, one to the left, one to the right. There's a lady on the left with the microphone, she's in blue, and there's a gentleman who is coming to my right, and he will also have a microphone. If you have any questions, just put up your hand, we'll just get you to ask them. To my right, first person is here. We will now, okay, thank you. Okay, so first question, any other thoughts or questions? We just do a quick one and a break. First question. Right. Okay, all right, so you are next then.
I just want to make
just a second, please. We'll just take the questions in bulk and then we'll do the break. Thank you. Let's hear you, sir.
My name is Right Reverend Matthew Sabate, Chairman of the Greater Accra Regional Peace Council of Ghana. I'm just looking at what we're talking about, amplifying women's voices in democratic and political transitions. It is not emerging from our discussion. In our African roots, when there is something happening, we hear in the Akan language, Yanko Bisa Abrewa. Is that right? Mm-hmm. We never say Yanko Bisa Akokra. Yanko Bisa Eden Abrewa. So moving forward, let us get into our African roots. I cannot see a lot of our queen mothers represented here. These are the custodians of our cultures. They know what happens within our communities. All I am saying is that can we get our cultural and sociocultural systems more involved in our peace building wherever we want to prevent or sustain our peace. Thank you.
Thank you very much.
Thank you. My name is Edusei Sadiq Jomfo. I work with the Legal Aid Commission, Kumasi. From what my senior colleague just said, today when you come to Kumasi, when you listen to most of the local radio and FM stations, some of the basic issues that can be resolved and settled at home are being aired on air, and some are even live on TV and other things. It seems to me that women are not assertive, and they need to be empowered and trained to realize that some of the basic conflicts in home and other places can be resolved. So I want to urge the organizers of this forum to champion a cause relating to this issue I'm talking about. Thank you.
All right, thank you. We'll take one last question and then, right, okay.
Thank you. My name is Martha Kwebianan, Dominion Leaders Foundation.
Right.
I'm privileged to be here and talking about sustainability and then looking at women leadership. I've realized that the core of it has to do with motivating the young to get to where the grown-up are. Something that is the role model effect. If a woman is pushed to, let's say, an MP level, and then her attitude or her character is negative, it gives effect to the young one who is coming. And just as it took one day for somebody to say that there's the need for women to be included, it will take one day for somebody to say all these talk, because women who are being pushed up there are not putting up good attitude. So I think that there should be a body to regulate the attitude of women who are pushed up there. If they are erring, somebody should stop them and let them know that the young girls are looking up to them.
Right.
Recently, some happened, and I think there should be a stop to that. Thank you.
Thank you very much for your comments. Hopefully, this doesn't turn out to be a debate, so we'll keep it short, we'll keep it brief. I did see the Honorable Gender Minister, Dr. Namomolate, laughing and at some points shaking her head to some of the comments. I'm sure she has a lot to share, and that is going to happen in a bit. So the Honorable Dr. Agnes Namomolate, Minister for Gender, Children and Social Protection, will be joined by the Honorable Manti Tarawali, who is Minister of State at the Office of the Vice President, Sierra Leone, as well as Her Ladyship Justice Professor Henrietta Mensah-Bonsu, who is Supreme Court Judge here in Ghana, and Ambassador Medina Wessa, former Secretary General for the Mano River Union, for the very important conversation for which we are here, amplifying women's voices in democratic and political transitions. But that will be after a break. We'll be back here in 15 minutes. Thank you.
Thank you. But that's not a good end to the program.
At all. How did you end us this way?
I had to. Timely, So you see what I'm saying? We have to continue this conversation at the High Commission later tonight. We have to do it. Very important.
It's going to a brew.
I thought we're yet to. Or at least a minute each. I thought we're yet to. Or at least a minute each.
I thought you were coming to
Just to note, there's tea and coffee outside. We are having a 15-minute break. We'll return here for that break. Just to note, there's tea and coffee outside. We are having a 15-minute break. We'll return here for that very conversation. Thank you.